Thing about politics. My name is Jarrett, and I'm here to answer all of your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated, be they left wing or right wing. So go ahead and throw your questions in the chat, and we will get to answering them. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, or something on the outskirts. I do not judge, I do not roast, I do not debate, so you don't have to worry about getting yelled at or getting told you're not smart or anything like that, or getting made fun of for trying to learn new things. That is not what we do here. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions about politics. So throw your questions in the chat. We will get to answering them. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. Butterfly emoji asks, "What is your peace plan for Ukraine?" I mean, when you have a um, turmoil that is basically instigated by one country, where Russia decided to invade Ukraine and Ukraine is basically just defending itself. The only way that you can really stop that war is by getting Vladimir Putin to stop that war. And how do you do that? As America, you can assist with Ukraine in their defenses. You can send them money and weapons and things like that. You can give them intel, and also you can try to put pressure on Putin to end the war. Or maybe you can do like some subtle things to try to encourage the citizens of Russia to get a new leader. I'm not trying to just that we like invade Russia and do a regime change or anything like that, but there's like, soft power and diplomacy that can potentially accelerate that process. From what I understand, a lot of people in Russia are very upset about the gas shortages, and so like that could be instrumental in getting somebody else in power in Russia who would not be doing a war for no reason with one of their neighbors. Fletch Lives Again says, "Would the SAVE Act force people to re register?" I am unsure about that. I am pretty confident that a lot of our registrations, if we are regular Democratic voters, are going to be quote unquote questions, So, yeah, I'm unaware of if that's a part of the bill where we would have to, every human being would have to re register. Um, yeah, that might just be new registrations, but I actually do want to look that up now. All right, Vanity, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. 2028 says, "What's your thoughts on AI in the military?" Terrifying. The prospects for it are terrifying. I think that if somebody's going to take a life, there needs to be a human being accountable for that decision. So yeah, this has to be regulated. The necessity for it being regulated is existential. Planes exist, I think maybe, says Azerbaijan or Armenia. I mean, I don't understand what the question is. Patrici says, "Do an ASMR whispering of your thoughts on Trump 2028. He's a psychopath." Ori says, "Politics are destroying humanity, sovereign peace." I don't know what sovereign peace means, but politics are not destroying humanity. Billionaires are destroying humanity. John Bradley says, "Thoughts on Fauci?" Seemed like a pretty good guy, just trying to do his job. Became this political figure not because he wanted to, but because a bunch of right wing psychopaths decided that they wanted to blame him as opposed to Trump for COVID and shit like that. Okay, Sarenhan says, "Do you think the average liberal would prefer neocons or far-right nativists like Trump?" Um, I mean, they're both bad options. I think that a neoconservative at least has certain principles that they are not willing to compromise. Like there's a reason why a lot of those neocons were really pissed at Trump for doing January 6th. They were just like, "You don't do this. You don't fuck with our elections and our government. You don't foment a coup against your own fucking government." And I pray for a day when we can have a Republican Party that is at least that sane. So yeah, I guess I would go there. Ecuadorian, great to see you again. John Abbott, good to see you again. Mikhail, good to see you again. John Abbott says Ukraine is also hitting warehouses and distribution hubs for Amazon, so that's going to get Russian citizens really pissed off about the war. Yeah, when they can't get their goods, their basic necessities and their goodses. All right, Pantera fan says, "Who you been gooning to lately, bro? You look like you lost some hours. I trust you." I'm not a big gooner. I prefer the end of the experience as opposed to the process. It's where that is concerned, it's about the destination and not the journey. NZA says, "Do you think Donald Trump will lost next American election?" I mean, he's not even allowed to run in the next election. So yeah, 100%. Somebody whose name I can't read says, "Do you like Charlie Kirk?" I did not like Charlie Kirk. I do not like Charlie Kirk. I don't think he should have been assassinated, but he was toxic for the culture and for politics. He was a liar and a con artist. Rami says, "Do you support Israel?" I support the citizens of Israel. I don't support the government of Israel. I support the citizens of every country. Israel is not the only country whose citizens I support. Condor says, "Are the Groypers a real threat to the GOP?" I think so. You know, the GOP, since allowing Trump into their midst, is basically on a race to the bottom. They are going to have to appeal to more and more fringe people, more and more fringe belief, more and more conspiracy theory minded people in order to sort of like maintain their voting base. And so, yeah, the Groypers, Candace Owens, I think the only potential slightly normal threat to the current GOP are the fake economic populists like Tucker Carlson's. All right, Rick Brunetti says, "Do you think Trump will try to run again?" I don't know if he'll try to run again, but he's going to try to stay president until he's dead. I'm pretty confident of that. Black Jawver says, "I really hope you guys get a third party." I hope we don't get a third party until we have ranked choice voting. Igor Tick says, "Who you support, Russia or Ukraine?" Ukraine. I mean, I support the citizens of both countries, but Russia invaded Ukraine. It wasn't the other way around. Visela Games says, "Do you think that Trump is circumcised?" I have no idea. But Stormy Daniels said it looked like a little mushroom, so maybe. Undefinable Human says, "Why do people still believe in the two-party system when it seems like it's one-party system?" It only seems like a one-party system to people who aren't paying attention. Undefinable Human, because if you pay attention to politics, then you recognize that different things happen when different teams are in charge. When the Democrats are in charge, people's lives generally get better. When the Republicans are in charge, people's lives generally get worse. That is both on the state and local level. Someone whose name I can't read says, "Jarrett, what was the agreement of Minsk?" I don't know what that is. Riggs and Janto says, "What is Congress and the Senate?" So Congress is the Senate and the House of Representatives. We refer to both houses of Congress by just saying Congress. The Senate is, the people that serve for 6-year terms. There's two for every state. And the House of Representatives, there's like 400 plus of them, and they kind of like get divvied up depending on the population size of the various states. Okay. Undefinable Humor says, "Why was Cory Booker found to be part of a secret society of people that are known to be Republicans?" I believe you are referring to Peter Thiel's like private chat groups where they like discuss, like TED Talk basically for rich people. But yeah, I would not I don't consider Cory Booker agreeing to go give a talk at Peter Thiel's secret society to mean that he is a secret Republican. Cloyd 111 says, "Middle class always gets through the most no matter who's in office." That is untrue. The Democratic Party has done a lot to protect and expand the middle class. Plains Exist says, "Between Farage and a joke candidate named Binface, if Binface wins, right wing Farage has to resign." I love that. 2028 says, "Do you believe we are in World War III?" No. Browsier says, "Thoughts on the Libertarian Party?" I'm against the Libertarian Party for two reasons. Number one, it doesn't work. Everywhere that they've tried it, those towns get taken over by bears. And number two, if you read the book Dark Money by Jane Mayer, regulars take a shot. If you read the book Dark Money by Jane Mayer, you discover that the entire libertarian political philosophy was started by the billionaire class because they want to get rid of all taxes so that they can be richer. And they want to get rid of all the laws so that they can, do whatever the fuck they want to us, and there's no legal consequences to it. Bill Buckley says, "What does Fauci have to hide?" I don't think he has anything to hide. I think that he probably just doesn't want to be bothered anymore. Undefinable says, "One last question. Why do they keep on recycling the same 6 topics every 4 years with no results?" Because people keep on electing Republicans who erase all the progress. So the problems that existed 10, 20, 50 years ago are still there because Republicans keep on undoing all the good that the Democrats do. And then they add more damage onto it that the Democrats then have to clean up. Spence Jacobs says, "How should China get their citizens out of moderate poverty?" I have no idea. Shade Whispering says, "Do you think World War III, if it happens, will be more of a trade war and a cyber attack?" I would probably not even define that as World War III. I think we're probably getting into semantic arguments then. Bill Buckley says, then why is he pleading the fifth? Because it's his right, and it's probably the easiest way to get out of that sham hearing. Domhnall Bestie says, what do you think of Ibrahim Toure of Burkina Faso? Don't know anything about it. Biririm Man says, what's your opinion on government-run grocery stores by Mamdani? I think they're a great idea. It's a great way to solve the food desert issue where certain impoverished areas don't have any access to healthy food options, only junk food. All right, Browsier says, what do you think of Green Party or other non-democratic left-wing groups? In America, they're all kind of bullshit. Like, there's no real legitimate other left-wing party besides the Democratic Party here in America, at least. I'm sure that they're great other left-wing parties in other parts of the world. Joe Padilla, great to see you again. Ecuadorians, I think the next president of America should change America's official language. They can proclaim from English to French and Spanish. I don't think they're going to get elected then. David, stop spamming the comments. Sam Power says, are my tax dollars going to protect PDFs? Yes. Because Republicans are in charge, that is happening. Yes, 100%. Biriami says, this just proves Democrats will follow leftist populism, no economic support it. I do not think that is accurate, Biriam. What is the issue with leftist populism? I believe we have a lot of data to suggest that it is much more economically viable, considering the fact that the deficit always gets bigger under Republican administrations. All the biggest stock market crashes have happened during Republican administrations. Democratic administrations show more job growth than Republican administrations. So, yeah. All right, Joe, Muzz King, and Vanity. Thank you so much for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. David, stop spamming the comments or I will block you. Tezzy says, would William Howard Taft have been a better president if he wasn't fat? I don't know. Tezzy says, I already did that one. Browsier says, thoughts about. You're going to have to finish that sentence. All right. Congratulations, David. You are out of here. People trying to get blocked today? What is the deal? Oh, okay. Kenny says, who will be the next Democratic nominee for the next president's election? Nobody knows. Nobody has any ideas. Edwin Diaz says, blue wave midterms? I hope so. There's no human being can tell you if that's going to happen or not, Edwin. So I would just say, do the work to make the thing happen that you want to happen. If you want there to be a blue wave, go do some volunteer shifts, go donate to some candidates, go talk to your friends about how they should vote for the Democratic candidates. Doc David says, will Democratic socialism make it more likely for Trump to win? I do not believe so. Browsier says, what do you think of actions of the Democrats during the Civil War? I mean, the Democrats were on the side of the South during the Civil War, so I'm against them. Kenny says, sorry, I was asking who you think it will be. I have no idea who it will be. I have people that I like a lot, but I am not. I feel like political predictions are worthless, and so I generally avoid making them. All right, somebody whose name is in binary says, will there be new wars in the near future? Potentially, if Republicans continue to be in charge and keep on, waging reckless and incompetent attempts at diplomacy around the globe, then yeah, 100% there will be more wars. Felipe Naranjo says, what do you think of Keiko Fujimori, the new Peruvian president? Don't know who that is. Havarila says, okay, Will Jordan Alvarez, I don't know who that is. Ananyar says, why was Obama not allowed to run for president twice? He was, and in fact, he was elected president twice. He won both of his elections in a row. Biriami Man says, tell me, according to economic census, is government-run grocery stores supported? I don't know what that question means. Like, what is it about a government-run grocery store in a place that has no good grocery stores? Why is that a bad thing? Biriami Man. Frank Cam says, are you liberal? I call myself a leftist or a progressive Democrat, but some people would argue yes. Okay, Felipe, I don't know who that is. Brian Smith says, 10 European countries have banned the burqa. Do you think USA should do the same? No, I believe the burqa should be protected because it's a freedom of religion issue. Natural says, nothing to ask, it's great. I don't know where you're living, but it certainly is not great here in America. Logan says, Republicans aren't why wars happen, it's capitalism. An argument could be made, but also Republicans are kind of like the vanguard of capitalism and trickle-down economics. So again, you could blame them for it very easily. Joe Padilla says, do you think he's going to use a nuke or boots on the ground? I don't think so. I think that Trump recognizes the political turmoil that he would be in if he did either of those things. I think all bets are off after the midterms. He is cornered and he is more dangerous when he's cornered. And so if a bunch of Democrats kick ass in the midterms and we got the Senate and we got the House and he's looking down the barrel of a third and potentially fourth impeachment, then yeah, I can 100% imagine a boots on the ground situation happening then. Browsier says, why Reagan won in almost every blue state? The demographics of the states were a lot different back then. It's not the same solidly blue states didn't exist during Reagan's time as exists now, and vice versa. It was a little bit more loosey goosey. People were willing to vote more across the aisle back then. And yeah, I think that Reagan was an excellent communicator. I think that a lot of the mainstream media was kind of like unconsciously Republican coded, you know. Yeah, I people write entire books about this shit, and I'm just kind of like, shooting from the hip at the moment because that's really not my area of expertise. Let's see here. Barda Fisser says, "Do you think Mitch McConnell is alive?" I don't. I have no evidence that he's not alive, but I really don't think that he is. He was so close to not being alive when he was out and about that I just doubt he's alive now. Joe Padilla, thank you so much for helping me reach my third gift goal of the day, and that means that it is finger hearts o'clock. Everybody, finger hearts o'clock, the best part of every day. All right. Keno says, why is America so polarized compared to any other countries? I think a large part of the blame probably goes to social media. Their algorithms kind of incentivize people to be divisive. I think a lot of it is, right wing media, which their entire modus operandi is hyping up one party and saying that everybody else is a psychopath. And so that has probably colored a lot of people's minds. Toughest Jew, please stop spamming the comments. Let's see here. And also, people keep electing Republican politicians like Donald Trump who are extremely divisive in their language, and they use words like Democrats and Democrats. They don't specifically call out politicians. They make it seem as though the voters themselves are the problem. And I think that that is an extremely polarizing and divisive way of talking. All right, Biriyami says, tell me, according to economic consensus, are rent control supported? Spoiler alert, no. I don't know what you mean by economist consensus. Like I don't care, man. I don't care if all the economists get together and, scribble down on a piece of paper what they think is a good idea or a bad idea. I think that when you're dealing with cost of living crises, you have to try things, and that's what Mamdani is doing. So who the fuck cares, my guy? So since you're so big on consensus, like ask the scientists what their consensus is about climate change, Beery. I mean, man. How do you feel about that consensus argument right there? Housework says, "Do you think we should stop supporting Israel?" Yeah, we already have a law in the books that says that we are not allowed to send money or weapons to countries that are guilty of doing war crimes, and Netanyahu administration is guilty of war crimes. Ergo, a wrestling historian says we need to restore sanity. Agree. Gunner says the politicians, council people, cops, warriors, judges. That's our problem. I don't agree with that. Rami says, wait, are you Jewish? Technically not. My dad was Jewish. My mom wasn't. My last name is Berenstein. I have this beautiful Jewish face, but I also don't practice the religion. Yimi Man says expert consensus is literally based on reality. I support climate change prevention, by the way. Oh, okay, cool. So you just hate Mamdani for racist reasons, I guess. Okay, Pure Blood Patriot says Democrats fought to keep slavery. Yeah, and then the parties switched their ideology on race relations. So Republicans are now the party of the KKK. God's Warrior says, of y'all cared about the consensus when they agreed with Kamala. I don't know what that means, God's Warrior. Ace says, did you see a teacher was arrested for clapping at AI? I think he was arrested because he was clapping at the people who were mad at data centers. Ace, is that what you meant? Doc David says, what countries will now buy our new national debt of 8 trillion? Probably zero. Kino says, why do you think that there are people who genuinely support Trump? Misinformation, propaganda, culture war stuff, racism, billionaires who want their taxes cut, things like that. Joe Padilla and Tink, thank you so much for helping me reach my first finger hearts goal of the day. Mikhail Meme says, thoughts on Greta Thunberg? I like Greta Thunberg a lot. I think she's doing great work. She is a young person who saw a problem and did not just hope and pray that the adults would fix it. She actually got out there and fucking did some work. So I don't have any hate for a young person who's doing the work. Try to make the world a better place. John Abbott says, remember when Trump collected $12 billion for his border peace? Then we never heard anything about it ever again. Pepperidge Farm remembers. And hey, you remember how we got a bunch of oil revenue from Venezuela, and that's apparently going directly into Trump's pocket? How about that? TK says, what are your thoughts on abortion? I'm pro-choice, but even if you're pro-life, you should still vote for the Democratic Party because Democratic policies actually decrease abortion and they protect pregnant women. Republican policies don't decrease abortion. They actually increase accidental pregnancies, which increases the need for abortions. And also, their abortion bans make pregnancy extremely dangerous for all women, even women who aren't trying to get an abortion. Echo Soul says, free Palestine. I second that. Gunner says, why do you agree with something that's against our constitutional rights? What's against our constitutional rights, Gunner? Nadav says, what do you think of Israel? I support the citizens. I do not support the government. Malik says, did California pay for New York expenses? I really don't know anything about USA economics. No. It is true to say that every state gets money from the federal government and contributes money to the federal government. So it's possible that there is tax dollars that are being collected from California that are being spent in New York and vice versa. What is accurate to say, though, is that virtually every red state takes more money from the federal government than they put into it via tax dollars, and blue states are the opposite, where they put in more tax dollars than they take out in revenue. Ergo, every red state exists because of the charity of blue states. So you're welcome, everybody who is so fucking pissed off about blue states living in red states. The things you have, like your paved roads and your public schools and shit, like I literally paid for that, so you're welcome. Atlas Fame says, bro, you look sick. Are you okay? I am not okay. I got allergies. I have a 4-month-old baby who's keeping me up all night. So yeah, no, there's a reason why I look terrible. Mikhail says, did you know she was from Sweden? I did know that she was from Sweden. Tyler says, who do you support, Trump or Harris? What a weird question in 2026. Zuaro says, opinion on the Iran war. It was an extremely poorly planned, stupid war. It was a bad idea that was done very, very badly. Like everybody, people who were war gaming out, if you ever wanted to go to war with Iran, all of them were like, the first thing they're going to try to do is close the Strait of Hormuz. And then for some reason, Trump, when he started the war in Iran, did not consider that as like a possibility. Like these guys don't give a shit about actually preparing things. They're like doing, interpretive improv in statecraft. DR says presidential or parliamentary system. I have no idea. Okay, Browser says, do you think Vance will be worse than Trump? In some ways, yeah, because like Vance is smarter and younger. But he doesn't have the charisma that Trump has. Like he doesn't have a following. Vance is hoping to inherit the following from Trump. But what Trump inspired in the base, nobody else can really do. Like JD Vance, Marco Rubio, like none of them can do what Trump did as far as like creating loyal voters whole cloth. All right, Jonathan Elaine says, is Trump a good president? No. Kamal says, who's the biggest ally for the U.S. in Africa? Oh, I have no idea. Shork says, are cheaper groceries proof that socialism is evil? No. Our Echo Soul says, who's the best candidate for the Democrats in 2028? Nobody knows that. I also do not know that. Echoes, all right, Browser says, do you support increased NASA funding to pre-Nixon levels? I don't know what the pre-Nixon levels were, but I do think that we should be funding science and space exploration. So I guess the answer is yes. Biri Yummy Man says, why do you support Mamdani if he goes against the economic consensus? Because sometimes those are wrong. I like politicians that try to do things. Biri Yummy Man. It's really easy to like go to a think group and say, hey, there's this guy, he really wants to try to help the poor people and he really wants to help the working people. Can you drum up some experts for me to come up with a bunch of reasons why it's a really bad idea? And then they do. So it's happening right now, Bury Me Man. Like it's happening. So we can just wait and see if it works as opposed to going, but the experts said it wouldn't work, All right, Mike Brannon. Also, I don't even know that the experts are saying that it doesn't work. Like Keynesian economics believe that shit works. So you can miss me with that nonsense. Boy, oh boy, is my patience in the fucking gutter today. Mike Brandon says, why do blue states have the highest unemployment rates, poverty rates, and income inequality? I do not believe that is accurate, Mike Brandon. If you look at every conceivable metric for quality of life, blue states are better to live in than red states. So I doubt that the thing that you just said was accurate. Joe Padilla and Muzz King, y'all are the gifting goats today. Thank you so much for helping me reach my second finger hearts goal of the day. We are at shooting distance from getting a monologue today, you guys, from getting the speech from Andor. Gunner says, yeah, got more programs, more things to pay for, more of everything except the right thing. No, billionaires pay for it, Gunner. So I really don't understand what the issue is. Mike Bannon says, I can prove it's true with legit.gov and .org sources. I mean, I do not believe that .gov sources are accurate during the Trump presidency, Mike. But there's a statistician named Nick Powers who has argued this point ad nauseum, so I'm pretty confident that it's not true. If you go and check out his videos, Mike, like you will probably see that the thing that you were assuming is accurate is not accurate. But the fact that you are coming prepared with .gov and .org sources tells me that you don't care about being proven wrong. You just want to assert that blue states are worse than red states. All right, Swinder Juris says Trump or Obama? What a weird question in 2026. Louise de Oliveira says, are you a conservative capitalist or a liberal socialist? I'm a progressive Democrat, so whichever one of those lanes you want to put me into, that's fine. Kino says, if you have to say one good thing about the Republicans, what would it be? I have nothing bad to say about Republican voters, but every single Republican politician deserves to lose their job. They are the absolute worst kind of politician. They are not doing their job. They are enabling corruption. They are enabling war crimes. They're enabling murder. It's fucking psychotic. It is absolutely psychotic. And anybody who looks at what's going on and does not conclude that every single Republican politician needs to lose their job, and that anybody who is out there hyping up these Republican politicians like Donald Trump and all the shit that you hear on fucking Breitbart and Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and Fox News and Ben Shapiro and everything, like, I don't know how you do that calculus. I don't know how you look at what's going on and do not come away with that conclusion. Joe Padilla, Vanity, and Wendy, thank you so much for helping me reach my third Finger Hearts goal today, which means that we're on to high bears. And you know what that means, guys. If we finish 3 high bear, what do you call it, goals, then we get the Charismatic Manifesto speech from Andor. All right. Juan Dadon says, does Israel come to your dreams as well? No, they do not. Viagra says, what do you think about the Malvinas Falklands? I don't know too much about it. I have heard that the people that are actually in Argentina, or the people that actually live there, do not want to go back to Argentina, that they're happy being a British colony or whatever. So yeah, but again, I'm not really an expert in that specific issue. All right, Keno says, if you had to say one bad thing about Democrats in general, what would it be? I think that there is too much diversity of opinion in elected Democrats for me to have like one bad thing to say about all of them. Like, do I have like a good faith criticism of people like Bernie Sanders and AOC? Sure, but it's different than a good faith criticism that I would have of people like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. So yeah, my criticism of centrist Democrats is that they're not aggressive enough. They're not meeting the moment. All right, Abdul says, do you know anything about corporate welfare and why it exists here in the U.S.? I know a little bit about it. The reason why it exists here in the U.S. is because we've created a system where if you have a lot of money, you have more political power. And so what people with a lot of money have done with their political power is they have lobbied politicians to pass legislation to put more money into the pockets of the already rich and already profitable corporations. So yeah, it's all just, fucking bribery and corruption enabled by the Republican Party. Paul says, thoughts on Al Gore? I like Al Gore. I wish that he had won 2000. I wish that he was more charismatic. Maybe he could have actually won that election if he had a little bit more of what Bill Clinton had. And we probably could have potentially stopped 9/11 from happening if we had adults in charge at the time. All right, Dave says, do you have a pink eye? No, this is like allergies and sleep deprivation. I've got a 4-year-old right now. Huda Balt says, Israel or Palestine? I support the citizens of both countries. I do not support the governments of either country. Danny says, why are more things about race than economic inequalities in the U.S.? Same exact thing I've been talking about, Danny. It's because the billionaire class wants us fighting amongst ourselves. If you want to stomp on the neck of a white person and keep them in poverty for generations, the easiest way to do that is to convince them that the reason why they're poor is because of immigrants and black people, and feminism and DEI. So ergo, this is all just the same old bullshit from the billionaire class trying to keep us divided. All right. Sticking your tongue out emoji says opinions on socialism. I like things like universal health care and paved roads and public education. So yeah, I'm down with that. All right. MD Max says, so eat the rich. Metaphorically, yes, but not literally. I don't condone any kind of violence. Gunner says, don't be scared to speak at, I don't, there's no end there. Paul's opinion on abortion. I'm pro choice, but even if you're pro life, you still vote for the Democratic Party because Democratic policies actually decrease abortions and protect pregnant women. Republican policies don't decrease abortions. They actually increase accidental pregnancies, which increases the desire for abortions. And their abortion bans make pregnancy a lot more dangerous for women, even women that are not trying to get abortions. Johnny Appleseed says, how can Gore have prevented 9/11? So if you read the 9/11 Commission, Johnny Appleseed, you see that our intelligence agencies kind of knew that Osama bin Laden was going to do something. They didn't know when it was going to happen. They thought he might use airplanes. They thought he might try to hijack an airplane and use it like as a weapon. And then the Bush administration took all that intelligence and said, "Cool, find us something about Iraq. Like we really want to go back to war with Iraq, so find us something about Iraq." And so they basically just ignored all these dire warnings that were coming from our own intelligence organizations. It was a massive fucking failure of national security. I do not know why Americans in general have ever forgiven the Republican Party for that. They allowed that to happen. That was their fucking national security fuck up. Probably the greatest national security fuck up in American history. It was their fault. They had full control of the government at the time. And they let all that intelligence fucking slip through their fingers because they had an agenda that they wanted to accomplish. They didn't give a shit about what Osama bin Laden was doing. They wanted to go back to Iraq. Okay, Bring Back Poetry says Clinton didn't know. Well, Clinton wasn't president at the time. Bring Back Poetry. Unknown says, do you think Trump may be running for a third term? I do believe that he's going to try to stay president until he is dead. Kino says, do you think America would be better if everyone can agree on Democrats' ideals? I mean, I don't need everybody to agree with everything the Democratic Party is trying to accomplish. I just need to convince people to vote and that it is better to vote for better candidates over worse candidates. It is better to vote for better political parties over worse political parties. This is better to vote for better platforms and ideas than worse platforms and ideas. All right, MJ Moonlight says, do you like when Macron wears sunglasses? I have zero opinion about when Macron wears sunglasses. Jeffrey Miller says, what do you think about the Fed holding rates? Probably smart, considering that prices keep on going up. So we definitely don't want to be, charging up the economy and increasing inflation when people are already struggling to put food on the table. John Brown says, never vote blue no matter what. No, John Brown, no. The expression is vote blue no matter who. Would you like me to tell you why people should vote for Democrats, even if they don't like the specific Democrat that they are voting for? John Brown just says never. Okay, so you're not engaging in the conversation. You're just trolling. All right, Jeffrey Miller says you don't think they need raised. No, I don't think should the interest rates be raised? It's a delicate dance. It's a balancing act. You don't want to increase inflation, but you don't want to go into a recession. Now, the Trump administration is making every decision as though they want there to be both inflation and an economic recession. And so I think the only thing the Fed can do right now is just like freeze, like a deer in headlights. Like, we're not trying to tip the scale in either direction here. If they had a more competent adult administration that they could work with to actually do the soft landing that they accomplished during the Biden administration of, not going into a recession, but bringing inflation back down from 9% to 2.3%, then yeah, maybe we could have a conversation. But right now it's like, yeah, I don't know, man. You got a clown on fire on a unicycle juggling chainsaws barreling towards you. Like there's no like real good thing for the Fed to do right now. All right, MJ Moonlight says, do you think Angela Merkel is Germany's best chancellor? Oh, I've got no idea. Noah Schwartz says, they tried to make the issue seem bigger than it actually is, so they divide people up. I don't know what you mean by that, Noah Schwartz. Henry says, politics is live, you getting enough sleep, bro. I am not. I have a 3-month-old. And I'm so sleep deprived that 20 minutes ago I called her a 4-month-old. Okay. Ellie says, I feel like taking away abortion will just increase getting them done in more dangerous ways. Agree? That's not something that we need to agree or disagree on, Ellie. Like, we have the data on that. Every time we have had abortion bans, abortions don't go down. We have basically the same number of abortions, but the women who are going to get safe abortions are now getting dangerous abortions. So the way that you decrease abortions is you stop accidental pregnancies and you make it so that people can actually afford to have the kids that they get pregnant with. And you teach children about the fact that sex creates pregnancies so that you don't have more accidental pregnancies. Alrighty, D Geezer says, do you believe Ireland should be united? If the people in Ireland want to be united, then they should be united. User a bunch of numbers says, a night nurse, if you could afford it, will work wonders. I don't know. We're already 3 months in. I don't know if it's worth it at this point, but I'll pitch it to the missus and see what she says. Duncan Crossbury, good to see you again, says, what do you think about having a system of direct democracy similar to Switzerland's? Also, hope you have a nice day. I am having a nice day today. I'm not really sure what you mean by direct democracy. Like, are the citizens voting on more specific issues than we do here in America? Is there less representation and more directly voting on specific issues, Duncan Cross? Because if that's the difference, I'm kind of like on the fence about it. Like, I can see this going the way of Brexit, or I could see it being like, all these red states that are voting to keep abortion legal. All right, Joey Locke says he can't afford a night nurse. He's broke. I know we could afford it. We just want to make sure we're saving for a college education and everything. Eduardo says thoughts on Brazil's politics. I don't know enough about it to monologue about it. Richie Sarabin says, I'm Mexican and I'm wondering about what's the expectations of the future elections. So if you look at polling, the Democrats are poised to take back the House, but it's about 50-50 whether or not they will also take the Senate. That can obviously change at a moment's notice. The Trump administration and the Republican Party are going to try their best to lie, cheat, and steal their way into winning both the Senate and the House in the upcoming election. So it's, nobody really knows what's going to happen. If you want to have a certain outcome, you should work towards it and not just like try to predict the future. Joey Locke says college is a scam. Joey Locke, it does not seem like you are here in good faith, so you're just going to go ahead and block you right now. MJ Moonlight says, do you think Keir Starmer is the worst leader of the Liberty Party in the UK? I have no idea what the history of the leaders of the Labor, what the history of the Labor leaders are like. The names Gibbs says, I think a lot of our issues stem from the South not being punished enough during Reconstruction. I don't disagree with that. I'm not really a history major, but everything I've read about it makes it seem like that is a spot on opinion there. The name's Gibb. All right, Duncan Crossbury says the citizens can directly legislate, raise referendums, initiatives, and also the government required our policies represented, and power is decentralized by giving regional governments more power than national governments. I mean, I suppose I could see some advantages to that system, Duncan Crossbury, but I wonder if that's easier in a country that is so much smaller than America. Like, I truly believe that progressive policies can work anywhere, whether you're a small country or a big country. But things get really messy when you are a country of 360 million people spread out over such an unbelievable distance, as opposed to whatever the size and population of Switzerland is. Vi says, hello, it's my first time seeing you. Are a Trump supporter? No, I am not. LB says, how do you feel about the war against Iran and its proxies? I am against it. It was very poorly planned and poorly enacted. There's no good reason for it. There's no version of success that's really possible. Trump is he's basically backed himself into a corner where he will not allow himself to settle for a deal that's worse than the deal that Obama got, but it is impossible for him to get a deal that's better or even as good as what Obama got because, number one, he doesn't have serious people doing any kind of statecraft. He's just got his fucking stupid ass son-in-law over there doing fucking real estate deals with the Iranians. And also, the Iranians have a lot more leverage right now because they've closed the Strait of Hormuz. So yeah, it seems like a big deal, like to the Trump administration, to every Republican that is allowing this shit show to happen. Like they should not keep their jobs. This is such a unbelievably fucking massive fuck up. There's no other way of looking at this other than just a massive, unprecedented own goal. Yeah, unbelievable. Okay. REI asks thoughts on Pax Silica. I don't know what that is. Mateo says, "Do you see a national draft possible?" I mean, anything is possible with Republicans in charge. Like they don't give a shit about protecting their citizens. So yeah, if they gonna want to force you to become cannon fodder, like they'll fucking do it. I don't think that's gonna happen before the midterms. But again, anything is possible with the Trump administration. It's they fed a bear a bunch of cocaine and then they let it be in charge of everything. So it's like anything is possible. Righty. Fletch lives again says, "Do you think Elon affected the 2024 election?" I think he affected it, but I don't think that he was like using computers to change votes or anything like that. He is guilty of election fraud. Like he is guilty of campaign finance violations. But I think that the main issues in 2024 were an incumbent bias. People hated whoever was in charge in 2024, not just in America, but everywhere around the globe because they were pissed off about the price increases from COVID. That and the fact that we kind of fully entered into a moment where the billionaires were controlling every piece of information getting. So like mainstream media, social media, right-wing media, like the billionaires are pushing very specific narratives to either get people to not vote or to vote for Republicans. And I think those are probably the biggest things that affected 2024. Yenar says, "Who is the most likely person in the next election?" I have no idea. Nobody has any idea. Gary Capija says, "Why liberals don't talk against Islamists?" Carrie, I think that if there are specific people who have extreme religious views that include things that go against liberal ideas, like being against the LGBTQ community, being repressive for women, then yeah, we 100% talk about that. But not every person in Islam is like that. You can go to the sacred texts of Islam and go like, look at all the shit that's in there. And I can show you the Bible and be like, look at all the shit that's in there. Like you can fucking kill a woman with a rock for wearing clothes made from two separate fabrics. The instructions on how to sell your daughter into slavery in that thing. So, I'm against, radical Islam the same way that I'm against radical Christianity. But yeah, there are a bunch of people who celebrate every religion in a way that is beautiful and peaceful and productive. Okay. Gary Capija says, "Not every person in Islam is like that, but Islam is like that." I completely disagree with that, Gary. I do not believe that Islam is like that. Alrighty. This person is writing, "Help Ukraine." We are helping Ukraine. Duncan Crosby says, "I sometimes wonder if the problem is the fact that the government has so much power, not in the libertarian sense, but the power of the government is directly established through force. I wonder if we need to do more decentralizing." I mean, it does sound a little states' rights, in my opinion, Duncan Crosby. The structure of America's government was intended to distribute power through the three main branches: the legislative, the judiciary, and the executive. The issue is that the Republicans aren't doing their job. Like the Trump administration is basically saying every branch of government, every agency within the government has to just do what I tell them to do. And that's not the way that America's government is supposed to work. But the Supreme Court, which has basically been captured by right wing billionaires, and the elected Republicans who control Congress right now are basically telling Trump, like, yeah, do it if that's what you want, like, go for it. But America has the structure to kind of like decentralize power in that way without returning it to the states. It's supposed to be a bunch of checks and balances and shared power. All right, Carrie says, I believe Marco Rubio will definitely win in 2028 against any Democrat. What do you think? I don't think Marco Rubio is getting elected to anything above what he currently is. All right, Maxine says, hi, bro. Yesterday you said that Germany was not split, so I sent you pics as proof. Did you check your DM? No, I did not appreciate the way that you were talking to me, Maxine, so I just deleted your message. Matan Hanan says, how can you explain the Trump jumping? I don't know what you mean by Trump jumping. Oh, chat, stop. Tired shaming the host, please. It's fine if they want to make fun of my fucking massive baggy eyes and my red and the red skin. I view it as a badge of honor. I look at these eyes and I go, I have a beautiful, healthy baby girl that is running me and my wife into an early grave, but she's smiling and she's funny and she's perfect. And so yeah, I'm gonna age like a fucking president, like how Obama was like all fucking shock white when he got out of office, and George W. Bush looked like the fucking crypt keeper when he was done. That's what raising a kid is like. Okay, Connor says, you just look like you need some sleep though. Yeah, no, I do, Connor, I do. Period says, hello, Lefty. Hello back. Somebody whose name I can't read says, would you like to be a U.S. president? I don't think so. I would like to have the power of the president. I'd never want to be the president. Like, I would like to point and go, like, do green energy, make abortion safe and legal, stop doing gun violence, but I actually don't want to do the job. The job sounds terrible. Maxine says, bro, what did I say? It was your whole vibe, Maxine. Also, I don't like people that say things that are inaccurate. Dusko Gujarov says, let's have some voice conversation. No, thank you, Dusko. Yim Raja Razik says, your opinion on the 8 U.S. lawmakers pushing Malaysia to stop deporting Israeli passport holders. I don't know who is doing that. I can see a lot of reasons. I can see a lot of reasons why that might increase kind of like political instability in that region. So I can understand like a good faith reason for not wanting other countries to deport Israeli passport holders. But I also get why Malaysia and other countries would want to do that. Like the current government of Israel is doing psychotic shit. And the only way to really change it is to put restrictions on the citizens and let them know you are not allowed to come here anymore because of what your government is doing. And then maybe they'll vote for a better government. All right, Duskov says, you ignore my first and second message about oil and the reason why there is war in the Middle East. I don't ignore comments, Dusko. I just don't see them. Bye says, what do you think about U.S. Army if you support Palestine? I support the people that are in our military. I don't support everybody who is making decisions for the military. Pete Hegseth is a clown. He's a joke. He's not serious. He's not good at his job. And in fact, he is stopping people from getting promoted, which is not something that the head of the Department of Defense is supposed to be doing. Like, that is not his job. But he is purposefully reaching down into the ranks and keeping women and people of color from getting ahead, from being promoted, because he's just a racist misogynist. Okay, thank you. Bye. M. Hatley says, you will definitely bounce back and she will be extraordinary. Mason, so you can keep up with her. Yeah, I'm not worried about it at all. But that's literally just for all the people who are trying to roast me for looking terrible. I'm like, yeah, I do look terrible because I had sex with a beautiful woman and now we have a baby. Alrighty, let's see here. Duncan says, sorry if my previous comment was too long. I was just wondering, how do you think institutions can be changed to ensure that such a scenario doesn't arise as it has with Trump? So the devil's in the details there. Like, we need to not only elect people who will respect our institutions, but also actually have laws that can be enforced to prevent this kind of democratic backsliding from happening again. Like, part of the reason why we're here is because the Supreme Court is 9 justices that were basically picked because right-wing billionaires wanted those justices to be there. There was a stolen Supreme Court by Mitch McConnell. There was a stolen Supreme Court when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. There are no enforceable ethics regulations. They get to pick whatever cases they want. They get to pick whatever legal justifications they want. They have this new the shadow docket thing. They've got the major questions doc. They're just inventing shit out of thin air, whole cloth, just to do the things that they want to do. There's no like legal justification that is consistent throughout all of their decisions. So I think an enforceable ethics code. I think expanding the Supreme Court. I think potentially adding a district, in between the Supreme Court and whatever the highest one is right now. I forget if it's the fifth or the Court of Appeals or whatever. And there's one more thing that I was going to say. Term limits potentially could be another answer to that. But yeah, there are all of these reforms are possible within every branch of government. But it does have to happen. And the only way that we can make it happen is if we unelect every single Republican politician. Every single Republican politician, from president to dog catcher, deserves to lose their job because they are allowing all of this fucking shit to happen. And it's like jaw dropping the shit that they are allowing to happen. Imagine that your family is being murdered by somebody and there's like a bunch of cops just standing around not doing anything about it. And a bunch of them are talking about how great what the murderer is doing is doing. That is essentially what the Republican Party is doing at the moment, what elected Republicans are doing. Like literally, Pete Hegseth is just fucking murdering people in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, just off the coast of Venezuela. Zero justification for it. Zero evidence that those people deserve that at all. What ICE is doing, fucking jackbooted masked thugs rounding up every brown person that they can see, regardless of if they are a citizen, a legal resident, have never done a single fucking crime in their entire lives. If they're a baby with cancer, they're throwing them in detention facilities that have maggot-infested food, not giving them medical care, separating them from their parents. Like, it's fucking disgusting. The Republican Party is allowing all of this to happen. And in some cases, they are cheering it on. All right, yeah, Maxine, I'm just done with you. Like, I'm not going to argue about the history of Germany, Maxine. Like, you want to call what Hitler did socialism because his party was called the National Socialists, but that's not what it was. Socialism does not equal a dictatorship. Okay, what's up, Lauren? Great to see you again. Beaveness says, I can't understand you get out of my country. I know this is my country. I'm born here. I don't even know where you're from, being this, but I was born here in America, so this is my country. Okay, El Taller de Govinda says, what's your position on the Fauci disposition? I don't know enough about it, but I'll tell you what my 2-cent take is. Fauci seemed like a good guy who was just trying to do his job, and he became this political figure because the Republican Party was looking to blame somebody who wasn't Trump for the fact that COVID was running rampant, even though it could have been stopped in Wuhan. So he becomes this political figure. Everybody's fucking yelling at him. The Republicans are trying to turn him into some sort of scapegoat. So he goes before this panel and just goes, I'm not going to do this anymore. So he just pleads the fifth. That's my take on it. I could be wrong, but yeah, I don't, yeah. People that want to demonize Fauci, I'm just like why? Like, what's the fucking point? Okay, Clean Fresh Edit says, will Francesca Hong win the primary? I have no idea. Nobody does. Okay. Thank you, Duncan Crossbury. I appreciate that. Okay. Felipe G. Campos says, I would like to ask why USA is directly and indirectly intervening in the Brazilian presidential race. So I don't know what exactly my country is doing to interfere with the presidential election in Brazil. I think it's a bad look if we are doing that. I don't think countries should do that. So yeah, if that is in fact happening, first of all, I should say I don't put it past the Trump administration. They are a bunch of psychopaths. So obviously that's the sort of thing that they would do. But yeah, I'll just let you know that me and a bunch of other Americans would love to elect people who don't do that shit. And I would love it if people did not do that shit to us. I would love it if all of social media was not filled with bots from Russia and India and North Korea trying to convince people to vote for just like the worst people on the planet or to not vote at all. Tris says, do you think JD Vance would be a good president? No. Hard no. Big full no. Final answer. Maxine says, I said after the war, the country was split West capitalist and East communist socialist. Oh, you're talking about after World War II. Okay, well, there you're wrong also, because the East was not communist socialist. It was a dictatorship. It was an authoritarian government, and authoritarianism is antithetical to the philosophy of communism and socialism. Also, when I am talking about communism and socialism, I'm talking about financial models. I'm talking about an economic system, not the government telling you what job you're allowed to do, or the government saying you're not allowed to start a fucking grilled cheese restaurant out of your apartment. All right, Ken Bennett says Trump 2028. That's an example of something to block. Fleshless against this Josh Hawley equals POS. No arguments here. Let's see here. Maxine says Stalin was authoritarian and communist. You cannot be both those things. Jaden says release the files. I would love to, except Republicans are in charge, and their whole thing is protecting PDFs. Right. Livia says, could the U.S. join the ICC if a Democrat wins? You know, they could. It might be a pretty big ask for the Democratic Party. The thing that's going to happen when Democrats get back into power, fingers crossed, is the same old tired narratives are going to get started trotting out. That the Democratic Party doesn't give a shit about you. They're racist against white people. They're biased against men. They don't give a shit about national security. They hate the military. They're weak. They want to apologize to every other country. They want to give every other country the power that America has. They just want to give it away for nothing. They're gonna ruin American supremacy in the globe. And so with that narrative and with the power of billionaires and Republicans being able to spread that narrative because they control an unprecedented right-wing propaganda machine, anything that looks like Democrats are doing those things is going to be very difficult. This is part of the reason why the Democratic Party always voted to increase the budget for the Pentagon. Was they were like, this is a really easy thing that we can do to not fall into the narrative that we are weak on national security and that we hate the military and shit like that. Now, I would argue that joining the ICC is a really smart thing for America to do. But I completely understand if the Democratic Party does not do it, if they get back into power, there's a pretty long list of things that we should do before we join the ICC, in my opinion. All right. What is up from Kharkiv? Who says, if you have 0 children to make 50K a year in the USA, is the Swedish economic system better? The Swedish economic system is better for everybody, regardless of if you're young, if you're old, if you're rich, if you're poor, if you have kids, if you don't have kids. Who? Pookie says, do you think someone mentioned in the Epstein files thousands of times should be president? No. Paul says, thoughts on RFK Jr.? RFK Jr. is a psychopath. He is killing us all. What do we got? We got measles outbreak. We got fucking, we can't eat salad anymore. There's another one too. There was measles, there was salad, there was, screwworm. We got screwworm now again. This is the job of the HHS secretary. This is what he's supposed to be stopping. And instead, he is keeping people from getting vaccinated and drinking fucking raw milk while doing pull-ups in jeans and no shirt. Like, what the fuck, guys? You know, all those Maha people, those Make America Healthy people that were really psyched about RFK getting all the chemicals out of the food and shit like that. Well, the Trump administration has relaxed rules on how much PFOS, forever chemicals, and glyphosate is allowed to be in our food and water. So, congratulations, guys. Congratulations for voting for that fucking ding dong. All right. Gemma Molly says, is it possible that with Mamdani as some sort of a lead, we could see real leftists on power? I believe that the most popular politicians in America are progressive Democrats, the way that Mamdani is, the way that AOC is, the way that Bernie Sanders is, etc. And so I do believe that we are in the process of changing the Democratic Party from the inside into being a party that looks a lot like the ideals of AOC and Bernie Sanders and James Tallarico and John Ossoff and Mamdani. It is a slow process, and the people who do not want the Democratic Party to look like that are very powerful, and they are aligned with powerful financial interests. So it's going to be hard. The billionaires never stop trying to fuck with us. So we just have to keep the work up. We just have to keep up doing the good work. Okay, old school guy says Democrat, liberal, socialist, communist, mothers, sisters, brothers will look like lovely in a burqa. No, old school. Just no to your whole thing. Just there's too many things in there that are wrong. So the easiest thing for me is just to look at the whole thing, you as a person, and just go, just like no to all of this. Okay, user a bunch of numbers says AOC is a real candidate. You got to be shitting me. I mean, she is a candidate in the sense that she is a member of the House and she has to run for re-election every 2 years. Brando says thoughts on trickle down economics. Trickle down economics is one of the tent poles of every individual's realization that the Republican Party is completely full of shit. Because there are so many things that we can't check. Like I can't go to Iran and see how their nuclear program is doing. I can't go to Ukraine and see if the government there really is being run by Nazis. But I can look out my window and talk to the people that I know and go, hold on a second. We have richer people than we've ever had. Where is all this trickle down that's supposed to be fucking happening? All I see are people not being able to afford food or gas or healthcare or fucking, sending their kids to college or buying a house or anything like that. Seems like income inequality is getting a lot worse. And it seems like all the problems that trickle down was supposed to solve are getting a lot worse instead of getting a lot better. And yet the Republican Party is still talking about we got to cut more taxes for the billionaires. We got to cut more regulations for their giant businesses. We got to give more of your tax dollars to wildly profitable corporations like Walmart and Amazon and shit like that. So seems kind of like bullshit to me. That's also how I feel about climate change, where I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to go to Antarctica and measure ice levels, but I can look outside my window and be like, holy shit, it's 1,000 degrees hotter than it used to be at this time of year. Well, what's going on? What's going on there, man? Okay, Livia says not being able to afford healthcare is a wild sentence to have to say. I completely agree, Livia. All right, everybody, I got to start wrapping things up. I'm at about an hour. Thank you very much, everybody who was here for the live stream, who sent likes and gifts and shares and asked questions and left comments and stuff like that. I very much appreciate all the support that you guys give to the show. The more support that you guys give to the show, the more I'm able to justify continuing to do this work, which I think is important. So yeah, you can send gifts on TikTok. You can send bits on Twitch. You can be a fan or a super fan on TikTok. Being a fan is free. Being a super fan is a subscription. You could also be a subscriber on my Twitch channel. And you can subscribe for free on my Twitch channel if you have Amazon Prime. Costs you zero, but it helps me out a ton every time somebody does that. So appreciate that. Also, you can join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Though there's a very fun incentive at $10 if you have that kind of money to throw around and you want to support me that much. Yeah, link for all that good stuff is in the bio. If you have any questions that I was not able to get to on this live stream or something comes up later, do not be shy about reaching out to me. I want to be a resource for you to be more informed and more involved about politics. So, however I can do that, my DMs are open. You can email me through my website. Link is in the bio, or you can join my Discord server. Link is also in the bio. Fudgems, Joe Padilla, Tink, Vanity, and Muzz King. Thank you so much for helping me reach my first high bear goal of the day. I love the Discord also because there's great recommendations there for things to do, books to read, podcasts to listen to, etc. Ace Enclave says, "Hi, who are you? My name is Jarrett Berenstein, and I answer questions about politics. And I am just wrapping up my show, Ace Enclave HQ. So come back some other time if you want to actually see my show on here." Already. Ignacio says, why you don't say anything about payments from USA to Israel? It doesn't has logic. your syntax doesn't has logic, Ignacio. But yeah, I often talk about how I do not believe that America should be sending Israel any more money and weapons because we already have a law in the books that says that we are not allowed to send money and weapons to countries whose governments are guilty of doing war crimes and genocide. So aside from it being the morally right thing to do, it is what's continuing to send money and weapons to Israel is illegal. So we should not be doing it anymore. 8 says, did you like The Odyssey? I liked it fine. Not my favorite Christopher Nolan movie, but it was a real visual spectacle. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. So do the work, everybody. The only way that we get out of this nightmare scenario that we are in is if we all do the work and be good to each other. You don't have to be a dick to somebody to do the work. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work, so take time off when you need. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad channel. Take care, everybody. Bye.